The smell of pine and cinnamon filled our family's living room, but the warmth I felt had nothing to do with the fireplace crackling in the corner. After 3 years of avoiding family gatherings, I'd finally decided to come home for Christmas. Maybe it was time to bridge the gap that had grown between us since I'd left my corporate job to pursue what my family called playing around with cameras. Jordan. Mom rushed to the door as I stepped inside, pulling me into one of her signature bear hugs. I can't believe you're actually here. Derek and Michelle are already here with the kids, and your father's been asking about you all day. Dad appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, his expression more reserved than Mom's enthusiastic greeting. Well, look who decided to show up. How's the video thing going? Before I could answer, my brother Derek's voice boomed from the living room. Oh great, the family disappointment has arrived. He appeared in the doorway, his perfect corporate smile plastered across his face. At 32, Derek had everything our parents considered success. A corner office at Harrison & Associates law firm, a house in the suburbs, 2 kids, and a wife who looked like she stepped out of a magazine. Nice to see you too, Derek, I replied, hanging my coat on the familiar hook by the door. Jordan. My 8-year-old niece Emma came running, wrapping her arms around my waist. Did you bring any of your cameras? Can you film me doing my dance? Derek quickly intervened, pulling Emma away. Emma, Uncle Jordan doesn't have time for that. He's very busy with his hobby. The word hobby hung in the air like a slap. I'd been running midnight productions for 3 years now, working 18-hour days, building something from nothing. But to my family, if it wasn't a traditional 9-to-5 job with a corporate title, it wasn't real work. Michelle, Derek's wife, emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of appetizers. Jordan, how nice that you could take time away from your little YouTube channel to join us. Her smile was perfectly practiced, the kind that never reached her eyes. Actually, I've expanded beyond YouTube, I said, accepting a glass of wine from Mom. I run a full production company now. Derek let out a bark of laughter. Production company? Come on, Jordan. You film weddings and birthday parties. That's not a production company, that's a side hustle. I felt the familiar knot forming in my stomach, the same one that had driven me to skip the last 3 family gatherings. Nothing had changed. To them, I was still the family screw-up who'd thrown away a perfectly good marketing career at Thompson & Associates to chase some impossible dream. Derek, be nice, Mom chided, though her tone suggested she agreed with him more than she'd admit. I am being nice. Derek protested, settling into his usual spot on the couch. I'm just saying, at some point you have to face reality. You're 29 years old, Jordan. Most people your age are building careers, buying houses, starting families. What do you have to show for the last 3 years? Dad joined the conversation, his voice carrying that disappointed tone I knew so well. Your brother has a point, Jordan. We're not getting any younger, and seeing you struggle like this, it's hard on your mother and me. I'm not struggling, I said quietly, but Derek was already warming up for one of his lectures. Really? Because last I heard, you were still living in that tiny apartment above the coffee shop. You drive a car that's older than Emma. Face it, little brother. This dream of yours isn't working out. Michelle nodded sympathetically. We just want what's best for you, Jordan. Derek could probably get you an interview at his firm. They need people in their marketing department. Still making those stupid videos? Derek laughed, settling back into his chair with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted their path in life. Get a real job like me. The room fell silent except for the sound of Emma playing with her toys in the corner and the soft jazz music Mom always played during family gatherings. I stared down at my wine glass, watching the dark liquid swirl as I considered my response. 3 years ago their words would have crushed me. Tonight they just felt irrelevant. You know what's funny? I said finally, looking up at Derek. You keep talking about real jobs and success, but you have no idea what I actually do. Derek rolled his eyes. Oh, here we go. Enlighten us, Jordan. Tell us about your revolutionary video business. Derek, Mom warned, but he was on a roll now. No, seriously. I want to hear this. What groundbreaking content are you creating? Wedding videos? Corporate training materials? Maybe some inspirational Instagram posts. I was about to respond when Dad reached for the remote. Enough, both of you. It's Christmas Eve. Let's just watch something nice and try to enjoy each other's company. Good idea, Mom said, relieved to change the subject. Maybe we can find a nice holiday movie. Something the whole family can enjoy. Dad scrolled through the channels past news programs and sitcom reruns, finally landing on Netflix. How about this? They always have good holiday content. The Netflix homepage loaded on their 65-inch TV, the familiar red logo bright against our living room wall. Dad navigated through the featured content, past romantic comedies and action movies, looking for something appropriately festive. Oh, look at this, Mom said, pointing at a promotional banner that had appeared. They're announcing their biggest series of next year. Shadows of Tomorrow. It says here it's their most expensive production ever. Derek leaned forward, interested despite himself. $200 million budget? Damn. That's serious money. The promotional video began playing automatically, showing sweeping shots of a dystopian cityscape, followed by intense action sequences and dramatic dialogue. The production values were stunning. Everything from the cinematography to the costume design screamed big-budget Hollywood. This looks incredible, Michelle said, genuinely impressed. It says here it's based on some graphic novel series. The creator must be thrilled. Dad adjusted his reading glasses to see the screen better. Says here the series creator is someone named Jordan Phillips. The name hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds before the implications hit everyone simultaneously. Wait, Derek said slowly, his voice losing its confident edge. Jordan Phillips. That's not. The promotional video continued and suddenly, unmistakably, my face filled the screen. Not a photo, not a brief glimpse, a full interview segment where I was discussing the creative process behind Shadows of Tomorrow, sitting in what was clearly Netflix's corporate offices, with the series title prominently displayed behind me. In this series, we wanted to explore what happens when society's most vulnerable people become its most powerful. My voice came through the TV speakers clearly. It's a story about transformation, about finding strength in places where nobody thinks to look. The remote slipped from Dad's hand, clattering onto the coffee table. On screen, the interview continued. Jordan Phillips, creator and executive producer of Shadows of Tomorrow, Netflix's most ambitious series to date, the host was saying. The series, which took 3 years to develop and cost over $200 million to produce, premieres February 14th and is already being called a game-changer for the streaming platform. Derek's mouth was hanging open. Michelle had gone completely pale. Mom was staring at the TV like it was showing aliens landing in the backyard. We're also excited to announce, the host continued, that this is just the first of 5 series that Phillips will be creating exclusively for Netflix under his production company, Midnight Productions, in a deal reportedly worth over $800 million. I took a slow sip of my wine, watching my family's faces as they processed what they were seeing and hearing. The interview segment showed clips from the series. The same stupid videos Derek had been mocking just minutes earlier, now revealed as scenes from what Netflix was calling their flagship production for the next 5 years. Jordan Phillips started Midnight Productions 3 years ago, the host explained, working out of a small apartment while developing the concept that would eventually become Shadows of Tomorrow. The series has already been renewed for 4 additional seasons based on early screenings, and Phillips has been named one of Entertainment Weekly's creators to watch. The promotional segment ended, returning to the Netflix homepage, but nobody moved to change the channel. The living room was so quiet I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Emma, oblivious to the tension, looked up from her toys. Uncle Jordan, is that you on TV? Yes, sweetheart, I said softly. That's me. Derek finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. $800 million? I nodded. That's just the Netflix deal. Midnight Productions has contracts with 3 other streaming platforms and 2 major film studios. Dad was shaking his head slowly, like he was trying to wake up from a dream. But you live above a coffee shop. I own the coffee shop, I corrected gently. And the building it's in. And 12 other properties downtown. I kept the apartment because I like it there. It's quiet, good for writing. Mom was still staring at the TV screen, even though it was now showing the regular Netflix interface. You never said, you never told us. You never asked, I replied, not unkindly. Every time I tried to talk about my work, someone would interrupt to tell me I needed a real job. Michelle's perfectly composed facade was cracking. But Derek said, We thought you were barely getting by. I looked at my brother, who was gripping his wine glass so tightly I was worried it might shatter. Derek made a lot of assumptions. You all did. I don't understand, Derek said, his voice hollow. If you were successful, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think? Because success isn't about proving people wrong, I said, standing up to refill my wine glass. It's about building something meaningful. And honestly, I was too busy building to care what anyone else thought about it. Dad was scrolling through his phone now, presumably looking up everything he could find about Midnight Productions and Shadows of Tomorrow. His expression grew more stunned with each article he found. Forbes listed you as one of the top entertainment entrepreneurs under 30, he read aloud. Says here you've won 3 international awards for independent film production. There's a whole Wikipedia page about your company. The apartment above the coffee shop, Mom said suddenly, as if she was putting puzzle pieces together. When you said you were working on a big project. I was writing the series Bible for Shadows of Tomorrow, I confirmed. It took 18 months to complete. I'd work all night, then test scenes with local actors during the day. The coffee shop was perfect because it stayed open late and the owner, well, I didn't mind the noise. Derek set down his wine glass and rubbed his temples. Jesus, Jordan. I had no idea. I know. But why didn't you say anything? All those times I gave you grief about getting a real job, about being responsible. You could have just told me. I settled back into my chair, considering how to explain 3 years of carefully maintained silence. Do you remember what you said when I left Thompson and Associates? Derek's face went pale. Jordan, that was 3 years ago. You said I was having a quarter-life crisis and I'd be back within 6 months, begging for my old job back. You bet Dad $50 I wouldn't last a year on my own. The memory hung heavy in the room. I could see from Derek's expression that he remembered the conversation clearly. You said creative people were impractical dreamers who couldn't handle the real world, I continued. And Michelle nodded along while she talked about how cute it was that I thought I could make a living with my little camera. Michelle winced. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said, not angrily, just matter-of-factly. And that's fine. You were entitled to your opinion. But I wasn't going to waste energy trying to convince people who had already decided I was destined to fail. Dad looked up from his phone. There's an article here from Variety. It says Netflix executives called your series revolutionary, and that it's tracking to be their most watched original content ever. The early numbers are promising, I agreed. Promising? Derek laughed, but it was a broken sound. Jordan, they're saying this could be bigger than some of the most successful shows in television history. I shrugged. See, the real test is when it premieres in February. Emma had wandered over during our conversation and now she tugged on my sleeve. Uncle Jordan, are you famous now? I guess some people might know my name, I told her. Will you still film my dance videos? Of course, sweetheart. That's the fun stuff. Derek was shaking his head again. I can't believe this. 3 years. 3 years of thinking you were wasting your life, and all this time I was building exactly what I set out to build, I finished. Look, I know this is a lot to process, and I'm not telling you this to make anyone feel bad. But maybe now you can understand why I stopped coming to family gatherings. Mom's eyes were filling with tears. We made you feel unwelcome in your own family. You made me feel like my dreams were worthless, I corrected gently. There's a difference. The room fell quiet again. Dad had continued reading articles on his phone, and I could see his expression changing as he discovered more details about Midnight Productions' various projects and partnerships. It says here you've already started production on your second series, he said quietly. And you're developing a feature film. 3 feature films, actually. The first one premieres at Sundance next month. Derek looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Sundance? As in the Sundance Film Festival. That's the one. But how? How did you go from making wedding videos to producing content for Netflix and Sundance? I couldn't help but smile at that. I never made wedding videos, Derek. I've been developing original content from day one. The first year was rough. I was basically working for free, building a team, developing scripts, creating proof-of-concept materials. But by year 2 we had investors interested. By year 3 we had studios in a bidding war. Michelle was scrolling through her own phone now. There's a whole interview with Entertainment Weekly where you talk about your creative process. And your family. My stomach tightened slightly. What did I say? You said. She read from her screen. My family taught me the importance of perseverance. When people believe in you, it's easy to keep going. When they don't, you learn to believe in yourself. Both lessons are valuable. That's very diplomatic, Dad said quietly. I meant it, I replied. Derek's criticism actually made me more determined. Every time someone said I was wasting my time, I worked harder. So in a way, I should thank you. Derek looked like he was going to be sick. God, Jordan. I've been such an ass. You've been protective of your little brother, I said. Misguided maybe, but it came from a good place. No, it didn't, Derek said firmly. It came from jealousy. I was jealous that you had the courage to chase your dreams while I took the safe route. And instead of admitting that, I convinced myself that your dreams were stupid. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Derek had never been one for emotional revelations. Mom was wiping her eyes with a tissue. We owe you such an apology, Jordan. All of us. You don't owe me anything, I said. But maybe going forward we could try to understand each other better. Dad set down his phone and looked directly at me for the first time all evening. I read about the themes in your series. The article said it's about people who are underestimated finding their power. That's part of it. Is that about us? About how we treated you? I considered his question carefully. It's about anyone who's ever been told they're not enough. Which at some point is pretty much everyone. Emma had been listening to our conversation with the intensity that only children can manage. Uncle Jordan, will you put me in one of your movies? The question broke the tension in the room and everyone laughed. If you can convince your parents to let you take acting classes, maybe we can work something out, I told her. Derek was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between awe and regret. I can't wrap my head around this. You're actually successful. Like really genuinely successful. Define successful, I said. You're about to premiere the biggest series in Netflix history. You're worth. God, I don't even want to know how much you're worth. Money isn't how I measure success, Derek. Then how do you measure it? I gestured toward the TV where the Netflix homepage was still displaying. Tomorrow millions of people are going to watch something I created. They're going to feel something, think something, maybe even change something about how they see the world. That's success. Mom was looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. When did you become so wise? Probably around the same time I realized that other people's opinions of my life were none of my business, I said with a smile. Derek stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the snow that had started falling. I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest. Okay. Did you invite us to the premiere? I pulled my phone out of my pocket and showed him the draft email I'd been working on for weeks. I've been trying to figure out how to word the invitation. The premiere is in 3 weeks here in the city. Red carpet after party, the whole thing. Derek read the email draft over my shoulder, his expression growing more pained with each word. The invitation was warm, gracious, and completely free of any mention of our family's history of doubting my career. You were going to invite us even after everything we said? You're my family, I said simply. This is the biggest moment of my career so far. Of course I want you there. Michelle was crying now, not bothering to hide it. We don't deserve that. Deserve has nothing to do with it, I replied. I love you guys. Always have. I just needed you to love me back without trying to change me. Dad cleared his throat, clearly struggling with his emotions. Son, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. What you've built, it's extraordinary. Thanks, Dad. And I owe you $50, Derek said, managing a weak smile. You definitely lasted more than a year. The tension in the room was finally starting to dissolve, replaced by something that felt like the beginning of understanding. Emma had crawled into my lap and was showing me pictures on her tablet, completely unaware of the emotional earthquake that had just shaken her family. Uncle Jordan, can you teach me how to make movies? I'd love to, sweetheart. Derek sat back down, his posture less rigid than before. I have to ask, what's next? After Shadows of Tomorrow? We're already filming the 2nd season, I said. And I'm developing a documentary series about small business owners who are changing their communities. People who are building something meaningful without recognition or fanfare. Like you did, Mom said softly. Like a lot of people do. Most success stories aren't dramatic. They're just people who keep working towards something they believe in even when nobody else believes in it. Dad was looking at his phone again, but this time his expression was one of pride rather than shock. The article mentions that you employ over 200 people now. 237 as of last week, I confirmed. And we're expanding. We just signed a lease on a new production facility downtown. The old Paramount building? Derek asked, suddenly interested. I heard someone bought that, but the sale was private. That was us. We're converting it into a full-service production studio. It'll be the largest independent facility on the East Coast. Michelle was shaking her head in amazement. All this time we thought you were struggling and you were building an empire. Not an empire, I corrected. A company. A good company that makes content people care about and treats its employees well. That's all I ever wanted. The conversation continued for another hour, with my family asking questions about everything from the creative process to the business side of entertainment production. For the first time in years, I felt like they were actually interested in my life rather than trying to fix it. As the evening wound down and Derek's family prepared to head home, my brother pulled me aside. Jordan, I need you to know something, he said quietly. I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 years ago, but I was too stubborn and too scared to admit I was wrong. Derek. No, let me finish. You did something I could never do. You risked everything for something you believed in and you made it work. That takes courage I don't have. You have your own kind of courage, I told him. You built a life that makes you happy. There's nothing wrong with taking the safe route. Maybe. But there's something right about taking the brave route. And that's what you did. We hugged then, really hugged for the first time since we were kids. As I helped Mom clean up the living room later, she kept glancing at the TV as if she expected my face to appear again. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all be a dream, she said. It's real, Mom. I know. It's just, my baby is going to be on television. My baby created something that millions of people are going to watch. Your baby grew up, I said gently. He did. And I'm sorry it took me so long to notice. As I drove home that night through the snow-covered streets, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of my family's disapproval had been lifted, replaced by something I'd almost given up hoping for: acceptance. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Just bought a subscription to Entertainment Weekly. Need to catch up on my little brother's career. P.S. The kids are already asking when they can visit Uncle Jordan's movie studio. I smiled, thinking about Emma's excitement when she saw my name on TV, about the pride in Dad's voice when he realized what I'd accomplished, about Mom's tears when she understood how much I'd achieved while she thought I was failing. The next morning, Christmas Day, brought another surprise. My phone was full of notifications, friends and colleagues who had seen the Netflix announcement, interview requests from entertainment journalists, and congratulations from industry contacts. But the message that meant the most was from Emma. A video of her performing the dance she'd wanted to show me with a note that said, "This is for Uncle Jordan's next movie." 3 weeks later, at the premiere of Shadows of Tomorrow, my entire family sat in the VIP section, watching as I walked the red carpet and gave interviews to entertainment reporters. Derek looked slightly overwhelmed by the cameras and crowds, but Mom was beaming with pride, pointing me out to anyone who would listen. During my speech at the afterparty, I looked out at the crowd of industry professionals, cast and crew members, and investors who had believed in the project from the beginning. But my eyes kept finding my family's table, where Emma was wearing the fancy dress Mom had bought her for the occasion and Derek was recording everything on his phone. 3 years ago, I said into the microphone, this series was just an idea. A story about people who are underestimated, who are told they're not enough, who find strength in unexpected places. Tonight, that story becomes real for audiences around the world. But more importantly, tonight I'm reminded that sometimes the most meaningful success isn't proving people wrong. It's giving them the chance to see you clearly for the first time. The series premiered 2 weeks later to critical acclaim and record-breaking viewership numbers. But the review that mattered most to me came from Emma, who called to tell me that she'd watched the first episode with her parents and that it was even better than Disney movies. As I write this, Shadows of Tomorrow is in its second season with a third already greenlit. Midnight Productions has expanded beyond my wildest dreams, and I've been invited to speak at film festivals and industry conferences around the world. But the success that means the most to me happened that Christmas Eve, when my family finally saw me for who I really was. Not the dreamer who needed to be fixed, but the person who'd been building something meaningful all along. Sometimes the most profound victories aren't about proving doubters wrong. They're about being patient enough to let the truth reveal itself in its own time. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people who matter most will be there to see it when it does.